So we're going to get some expert analysis on that speech from one of our favorite members of the United States Senate, rock-solid conservative, champion on the fraud of global warming, and all-around good guy. We always go back and forth on who our favorite Oklahoman is. If Harold Hamm's on the program, it's Harold. If it's Jim Inhofe, it's Jim Inhofe. Today it's Senator Jim Inhofe, who's back with us on the Common Sense Club. How are you, sir?
I'm great. I'm great, Scott. How are you?
Good. Good to catch up with you.
Actually, you're being pretty lenient, pretty generous with our president. That speech that he gave, I happened to have an opportunity to respond to that on Fox News. And, I used to say, Scott, that Bill Clinton could lie with conviction better than anyone I knew. He can't touch this guy. I've never seen someone be able to look into the camera and say something that just flat is just, there's no foundation of truth.
What was the worst lie in it?
Well, the worst lie in this one was that he is for natural gas. Now, our good friend Harold Hamm is going to be concerned with this, and a lot of them, even some of my colleagues from Oklahoma in the House, they were applauding him for this. And I said, wait a minute. In the same speech that he says he wants wants to be more reliant upon natural gas, he's also going to shut down hydraulic fracturing, which means you can't get natural gas. And a lot of people don't realize that. Just to put this in perspective, Scott, you may assume that everybody remembers, but you and I have talked in the past for a long time. Back, 8 or 9 years ago, when I started taking on this whole thing on global warming, the Al Gore thing, at that time it was very lonely because I was alone. But now we have won that battle. And so where we are today, the significance of today, is that Obama knows that he's not going to be able to pass legislation for a cap and trade, which would constitute the largest tax increase in the history of America. So he's going to try to do it through the Environmental Protection Agency. Now, you combine that with the fact that we have a president who made a speech on energy today, while the next amendment pending was my amendment to the small business, which would take the jurisdiction for regulation of greenhouse gases out of the Environmental Protection Agency. They're the ones that are trying to do fossil fuel under. I mean, they're trying to destroy coal, natural gas, and oil. So you have a president who says that he's supporting that. At the same time, he talks about moving the regulation of hydraulic fracturing to the federal government. Now, for those of you who might be listening who are not that familiar with it, I happen to be from the state of Oklahoma, and we did the first hydraulic fracturing job in 1948. And Scott, we have not had one documented case of groundwater contamination since 1948. So they're coming through the back door to try to say they're for gas and then kill it. Same as they're doing down on the Gulf. One of the other things he said that was totally not true was the permitting. Well, they ever since the spill down or the accident down there in the Gulf, they have had the occasion to give only 2 permits, and those are permits they took away. Now he announces on his big thing today that they've done 7 permits. Well, they did 5 that I didn't know about. Apparently, they did that just in anticipation of this thing. But I think the most important thing is, and I want to be respectful, but you got to keep in mind, the Democratic Party in the United States Senate and in the House, but mostly in the Senate, I can remember the days when the financial backbone of the Democratic Party was labor unions. Then after that, it was trial lawyers. Now it's clearly the far-left environmentalist crazies out there. And I'm talking about MoveOn.org and Michael Moore, George Soros, and that Hollywood crowd, the Al Gore people. Well, they want to stop all fossil fuels. That's coal, oil, and gas. One of the things he said, another thing he said that wasn't true, was that we can only produce something like 2% of what we need or something. That's not true. What they do is very cleverly use the words, and this is important for your state up there and the people who might be listening who know how important it is to be able to start developing our own resources. That is, when you talk about how much you have in the way of reserves for coal, natural gas, and oil, you can't use the word proven, because proven means you've had to drill and you're actually down there in it. But if they won't let you drill, then you can't use proven. Well, that's what the president was using this morning. Recoverable reserves. We as of about 6 months ago, we have the largest recoverable reserves in coal, oil, and gas of any nation in the world.
Yeah, and I don't know why this doesn't receive more news, but this is extraordinary. Congressional Research Service says we have the largest reserves on Earth.
That's it.
I mean, Saudi Arabia's third, China's fourth, Canada's sixth, combined, and that's without including a lot of the shale oil deposits, I guess, in the future, because we don't know enough about them.
Well, yeah, we're not even counting shale. Now, you throw shale in the mix, and we have no problems for the next a lot longer than you and I'll be around. As it is right now, we have enough, without shale, we have enough oil in the reserves, if we could get the obstacles out of the way, in the United States to last us 50 years, enough gas, natural gas, 90 years, and we have coal, of course. That's our biggest source right now. So I guess what we're saying is, if you want to be independent, if you want to take away your dependence on the Middle East, all you have to do is exploit our own resources. There's not one other nation in the world where the politicians won't let us exploit our own resources.
Amazing. I want to ask you a little bit, but you mentioned hydraulic fracturing, and of course the EPA is coming for that. And we're going to talk about your efforts to stop them on regulating carbon emissions in a moment here.
Sure.
I've had some listeners recently ask about petrofracking. What do you know about petrofracking?
Well, I don't know anything about it. But fracking is a technique that you would use. Petrofracking refers to the gas part. I'm sorry, the oil that you would get through the hydraulic fracturing. Hydraulic fracturing is the technology is usually referred to gasoline, so it can be used for gas and oil. However, natural gas it's all in tight formations, Scott, and the only way you can get into a tight formation to extract the oil or gas is through hydraulic fracturing. I think when you talk about fracturing, you must be talking about just the oil.
Well, my understanding is it replaces water, and of course, water is obviously used in high numbers when you're doing hydraulic fracturing, and works well, and it's a game changer in the bottom.
Oh, I see.
And so many other places. Whereas petrofracking is supposedly some new technology where they use a byproduct of petroleum that can mix with the oil you're pulling out of the ground, unlike the water where you have to separate it, which makes the process more complicated. But because you can mix it, you bring it back up, so it sort of removes all the environmental wackos argument about polluting the water supply and all the things that don't happen that they claim do happen. I just want.
Well, the only thing I'd say about that is, if that's true, and I'm not familiar with that term because we don't use that in Oklahoma, but I would think just the reverse would be true, because the problem that they say, if you are injecting something in the ground, they're saying that that's going to eventually get into your water supply. Well, if they're injecting something with a petrol base in it, to me that would be even more dangerous. But there is no danger in hydraulic fracturing because the system has worked well. And let me tell you what.
And I hate the scare tactics, but again, New York shut it down. EPA wants to take over the states regulating this. It's another threat of the industry.
Well,
as you point out, here's a guy who claims he wants to reduce U.S. oil imports, but through electric cars and fuel efficiency and not more domestic oil production, which is the 10 million jobs out there in the industry and growing every day. One shining star in an otherwise sluggish economy. It's stupid.
Well, when you get into the formations in New York and in Pennsylvania, they are huge. And in fact, the congressman I was down here in the studio doing talk shows today. He actually was with me for a while down here, a Congressman Reed up there, because they're trying to put them, as you point out, in his state of New York, they're trying to shut them down from this process. And so, again, it gets right back to the speech that our president is making, trying to make people believe that he is supporting this. And, the reason is, as we get toward $4 and $5 a gallon gasoline, that's going to be a huge issue in the 2012 election. And it's all 100% the Democrats' fault. Right down party lines, it's their fault. And by the way, it's important that you up in your country make sure that your senators, any Democrat senators up there in this oil country, they should be supporting my amendment to take the jurisdiction away from the EPA. They have a lot of cover votes, Scott, and you know what that is.
I sure
they
do.
allow them to.
One of them has Jay Rockefeller's name on it.
You got it.
We just got off the phone with John Hoeven, by the way, who said he's proudly a sponsor of your legislation and would not vote for the Rockefeller amendment. So we did get him on record specifically on that. Senator Conrad's a little harder to pin down, obviously, on that point. And I wanted to ask you something before we.
I'm also thinking about Montana and some of the other states up around there that listen to you.
Yeah, Amy Klobuchar in Minnesota, Tim Johnson in South Dakota. No question about it. Now, before I get to the EPA thing, just quickly, I want to ask you, Senator Conrad, Senator Chambliss are reviving a Gang of 10 that was formed back in 2008.
Dumbest thing I ever heard of.
Want to get this going again to get energy legislation going. What's your reaction to it?
Well, it's stupid. First of all, there's the reason we have a problem. They're addressing two problems. Their Gang of 6 right now is addressing supposedly the deficit. Well, you have an administration along with all the Democrats agreeing to spend $800 billion on stimulus that doesn't stimulate. Then they wonder why we have the deficits we have. And so when you form a gang, and I love Chambliss, he's one of my best friends, and I've told him the same thing. You have 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans that are going to put their heads together and figure out how we can balance the budget. Well, garbage. You just quit spending money like drunken sailors, and that'll happen. This gives the impression that this is a bipartisan problem. I would say the same thing was true if you remember 2 years ago when they had the Gang of 10. That was an issue that would have been probably the number one issue in the 2010 election, except when the Gang of 10 came, everyone assumed, well, there are 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans. It must be a bipartisan problem. So that's why I'm opposed to it.
Yeah, their plan is to blend wider offshore drilling with major new investments and incentives around electric vehicles, biofuels, as well as measures to support nuclear power. Their 2008 plan called for raising billions of dollars to support green energy investments by repealing or limiting some oil and gas industry tax breaks, which is a tax hike on oil again.
All that is giving away our issues. By the way, the tax hikes on oil have been in every one of the president's budgets, so he's still trying to do that. Whether it's percentage depletion, whether it's depreciation.
Well, by the way, your colleague in Oklahoma, Tom Coburn, and Ken Conrad have pushed this change of the definition of an independent oil company, and ultimately, Harold Hamm and others have told us 30% hit jobs, investment, and everything right off the top if they get their plan in the deficit commission.
Well, of course, I am familiar with that. I'm disappointed. Bad idea.
All right, let's take a break and come back and let's talk about the EPA, because I know, is the vote today or is it tomorrow?
Well, it's supposed to be 12 days ago, and he keeps postponing it. What does that tell you?
Yeah, we'll talk about that next with our friend Senator Jim Inhofe on the Common Sense Pub and the Scott Hinton Show. The EPA must be stopped, big time. And ultimately, this is something you can ring the phone off the hook of some of our area senators so they don't take cover with one of these lesser plans. Senator Inhofe will tell us about his plan after this. Don't go away. 5 minutes remaining with our guest, Senator Jim Inhofe. Let's talk about this vote when it comes, hopefully soon, to ultimately make sure the EPA's ability to regulate carbon emissions via the Clean Air Act is shut down. There's something called the McConnell-Inhofe amendment, and I take it you must have the votes to get this passed, which is why they keep kicking the can down the road. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, I'm afraid that's not quite accurate, because in the Senate it takes 60 votes. But what they don't want to do, Harry Reid certainly doesn't want to put all of his endangered species, those coming up in 2012, into this tough vote. He's trying to figure out some way to keep from doing that. And that's why they have the cover votes that you're familiar with. And when you mentioned Rockefeller, that's one of them. But there's the other one is, who has that one? Baucus. Yeah, Baucus has one that says, well, we're going to exempt the small guys so that we're only going to regulate CO2 through the EPA on the giants, the refineries, the manufacturers. But the Farm Bureau and all the rest of them know better than that, because if they raise the price of energy, it affects everybody, and certainly the small guys too. So they're trying to say those are cover votes. So vote against Inhofe, and then we'll give you cover by voting for one of those. We can't let that happen. And I think one thing I should have mentioned back when you were talking about his speech, let's keep in mind, it is the policy of the Obama administration to do away with fossil fuels. And I know you've quoted Stephen Chu before, but you got to keep doing it because it's so outrageous.
Mr. $10 gasoline. You said we need $10 gas.
Yeah, he said we want to have the same price as Europe. He said we won't be able to get all of our green programs in until we price fossil fuel out. Well, guess who pays the price? You, me.
I don't know if you're aware, but he won a Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, so did Al Gore.
Tells us all we need to know.
And so did Obama. Yeah, that's right. Obama did too.
Yeah,
that's right. Well, anyway, right now, and I hope that we'll keep in mind we have 23 Democrats who all go along with Obama up for re-election in 2012. Of the 23, about 13 are endangered species. And you guys can make a big difference in picking up 3 or 4 of those seats, and we can change this whole thing. It's a numbers game, and while I don't agree with we got some pretty mushy Republicans, at least they're Republicans, and they'll go along with something like my vote. Let's wait and see what happens. It's supposed to come up tomorrow morning. I'll bet you it doesn't.
And ultimately, the cover votes are just that. Don't let them tell you, well, I'm for the Rockefeller Amendment. All that does is stall this and allow the EPA to stall construction permits until after their 2-year delay expires. So it's stupid. 2-year moratorium is dumb.
It's stupid. And besides that, Scott, we've got several companies. One in Oklahoma is an energy company. They don't want to expand until they know how this treatment's going to be. A 2-year delay merely delays them from making that decision, and that's jobs and money. And let's keep in mind one last thing. Don't think in a heartbeat. For those people out there who think and believe that somehow you can cut down CO2 by, even if you thought it was necessary, by having these regulations, even Lisa Jackson agrees that wouldn't affect it because that would only apply to the United States of America, and that's not where the problem is.
And where our listeners need to realize is that if the EPA ultimately remains with the ability to regulate carbon emissions, your power bill is going to go up. This is all about the power to the bureaucrats who have blown off the courts, who have blown off what Congress has voted on this and taken this over to get their way. They couldn't get cap and trade rammed through, so they want to do it themselves by bureaucratic fiat, and your power bill will go up.
It will. Obama, let me quote Obama on that note. He said, under my plan of cap and trade, electricity prices would necessarily skyrocket. Yeah. Obama.
And so that's what's going to happen, and that's why you need to call Senators Klobuchar, Johnson, and Conrad. We've already talked to Senator Hoeven. He's assured us he's the co-sponsor of McConnell Inhofe and would not vote for the cover vote. So we got him taken care of. Call the others and say, McConnell Inhofe on EPA, you got to do it today. And we've got their contact info up at scotthannon.com to make it nice and easy for you to either email, call, or whatever. Senator, keep fighting. We appreciate you so much, and know you got some tough battles that we're going to.
We do, Scott.
Hopefully change some things in 2012, not unlike what was done on the first Tuesday in November in 2010. But in the meantime, keep fighting.
Got it.
Good to talk to you.
Thank you, Scott.
Senator Jim Inhofe.